Hello, hello. Welcome. Good afternoon to you all. We are so glad to
Hey.
have you with us as we I'm getting feedback. Sorry about that. Thank you all for being with us as we conclude the weekend of Sacred Resistance with the very reason we have gathered this weekend thus far, and that is to share the project vision and really brief you all on what Mama Scraps is looking to do as we return to Mississippi. So, peace and blessings. My name is Brittini, also known as Rebel. I serve as the founder and executive director of Mama Scraps Incorporated. And I would like for Aisha to introduce herself, and then we're going to go ahead and get started.
So, hey everyone, I'm Aisha. I am co founder of Mama Scraps Incorporated, and I currently serve as the co chair and sustainability and ag lead. So, very excited to be here. We've got a really beautiful presentation pulled up for you all, and let's get into it.
Beautiful. So, this morning we would like to begin with a land acknowledgement to focus in our intention and our presence on those who are native to the lands that we all now live on. I am situated here in St. Louis, which is the land of the Osage, the Miami, and the Sioux. And so we give thanks for those who were here and for those who continue to remain. Asha?
I'm here in Tuskegee, Alabama on Muskogee and Creek and Choctaw land, and give a thanks to the ancestors who inhabited these spaces before me and who continue to inhabit these spaces.
And so we honor those of the Choctaw Nation as the inhabitants, original inhabitants of where our property and land is currently situated in Hillsborough, Mississippi. Can you go to the next slide, please? So we are here because Mama Scraps has been engaged in a capital campaign this year, and this is called Sacred Resistance Phase 2. The first one was around saving the land, reclaiming it, and this campaign is really about returning to the land. And in order to do that, we launched a capital campaign to be able to have the funds to bring our vision to life. Please continue to share where you are coming in from in the chat as we get to know each other in this time. And really what we're going to do is, next slide, sorry. We're going to focus in on a few different things. We're going to share our story with you all. We're going to offer a framework for how we are approaching this project. And then we're going to give you an outline of not only our timeline, but what it's going to really be like once this wellness village is finally brought to life. Next slide. So where do we begin? Many of you may have heard this story and some of you may have not. So in the beginning, my great-great-great-grandfather purchased his own 40 plus acres. I actually think it was close to 60 acres of land in the 1910s. During that time, he brought enough for his family to be able to have land as well. All of his children inherited a piece who were men. His one daughter, Mama Scrap, was able to get her land once she got married. And the first thing she did was to make sure that land was in her name. She did that in 1919. When she passed away in 1978, she passed that land to my grandmother. And in 2019, 100 years after Mama Scrap acquired the land, we saved it to make sure it stayed in the family. I grew up visiting Mississippi, and I would dream of what it would mean for us to be in that space because it always felt so loving, so giving, so life filling to go down there. And I knew that there was something, even as a child, that was calling me back to that space. It's finally coming true. Our family has not been on that land specifically since Mama Scrap passed in 1978. And while we have other family who we visited over the years, as I grew up in the 90s, most of them have passed on. And so what the opportunity is now is for our family to return, but to build a new community there that is not only for family, but for all of those we are in community with. Next slide, please. So I gave you some of our story, and here is just some slides of our newsletter, the first newsletter that we put together, and we'll make sure that you receive those if you haven't already. This was the spring one, and we have another one from the fall. But essentially what it's doing is laying out the vision that we have for this land and the connection, the importance of women, Black women, and what it means for us to claim our freedom in a way that also frees the land rather than making us owners of it. Next slide. So here's a recap of our project timeline. Phase 1, Save the Land, was completed in the summer of 2019. During that time, we purchased 5.2 acres. My grandmother still has about another acre and a half of the land that she wanted to keep for various reasons. And so what we have is right off of her land is our 5 acres connected. And it is primarily forested land, as you will see shortly. And so we purchased that in 2019. And since then, we began to vision what it would mean for us to go back. When the pandemic hit last year, we decided it was time for us to get serious about this vision and not wait until, I don't know, I think it was like 3 to 5 years was my original timeline. But the time was now. And so in the spring of this year, we launched our capital campaign. And we hope that by the spring of 2022, we will be finished so that initial construction and planting can begin. And by the winter of 2023, we can be there. Phase 3, Phase 3 includes food forest, aka a permaculture design. So we'll do some initial things with that now, but then we have a complete phase dedicated to how we will roll out and develop the land in a way that is sustainable, healing, and healthy. And then long-term vision is the retreat house. And y'all just got to stick around with us over the next few years to learn about what that vision is. Next slide. So the significance of this project. I come from an organizing background, and we talk about how the personal is political. But I want to switch that for this project because the political is personal. So while we may have all of these frameworks, these ideas that shape us, that provide a roadmap, there's also a very personal connection to these things. The first thing that you're going to see here talks about return. And this is the primary pillar that began our work. And essentially what we are looking at is not only our family returning, but what is happening with Black folks across this nation. And that is a new great migration where people are returning to the South, but they're going to places like Texas and to the Carolinas and to Atlanta. And I love those places. But we have not returned to Mississippi or to Alabama. We also talk about not only returning to the South, but return to a way of life and a way of being, where rituals and ancestral knowledge that we have been disconnected from are reintegrated into our lives. The next pillar of our work and framework is under reclaim. So I just stated that Mississippi has not seen this reverse migration. So we are reclaiming our right to be in a space where our ancestors were, not only as slaves, but also as free people. This is an opportunity that we see to not only create a safe space and a haven on those 5 acres of land we have. This is about a vision of reclaiming the entire state of Mississippi, one in which we don't look to traditional standards of industry, because that's how people return, where there's work and where there's jobs. But what does it look like for Mississippi to become a place and a space where people are returning to reconnect with the land, to live self-sufficiently from the land and in community with people? It's a vision for a radically different way of being than the norm of most of us in the mainland. The next pillar here is to rematriate. This is a term and a practice that we have adopted from our indigenous sisters, who understand that it is both not only a way of life, but a spiritual practice to live with respect for Mother Earth, and to do so in a way that reduces the harm that the earth has experienced. We also look at rematriation as a way of maintaining and continuing the connection of 5 generations of women who have held this land, and to ensure that there is still space for the women who will come after us. Finally, the final pillar of this is to retreat. Now, what's there just kind of talks about our own spiritual journeys. But I have spent much time developing space for people to unplug and reset. And we understand retreat not as a one-time thing, but as a way of life in which we have the space, the time to rest, to be in ritual, to deepen community and connection with one another. Next slide, please. So ultimately, this project is a dedication. This is for the women and the men and the children born on that land, those who worked to clear that land, built on that land, farmed on that land, and lived a sustainable and self-sufficient life on that land. Back to the roots we shall return, and what once was shall again be. Next slide. So what are we talking about here? We are talking about the beginnings of a wellness village. For us to get there, there are some basics. Right now, that land has completely been taken back over by the earth, and that is a beautiful thing. But we're going to need a little bit more than just the earth to be able to be there. So we want to, dig a well for water. We want to make sure that our electricity is set up and we can have Wi-Fi when people are there. We're going to do as minimal clearing of the land as possible and paving of roads, but the intent is to go and be with the land, not on the land. The construction will include a 2,400 square foot shared living space and detached dwelling. So that's 2,400 square feet across it. It's not a huge space. It's an intimate space. And then, as I shared before, to begin to establish the plant essentials for our permaculture garden and food forest. That will be our primary way of growing food. Next slide, please. Here are some images of me and my family on the land, some background, and then a Google shot so you can see that literally the land is all forested. And so we will create a retreat in the midst of the forest. Next slide, and I'll pass it to Aisha.
Yeah, so we thought it'd be kind of fun to take you all on a bit of a journey, and actually sort of give you all a little bit of the experience that we're hoping to create on this space virtually. So if you'll open your inner eye, your imagination, and follow us on this little trip here. So imagine a group of 5 organizers from Detroit who've been working on anti-gentrification work. They decide to come and join and visit us at Mama Scrap's home and farm. They arrive in a bus from the airport and enter the driveway of Mama Scrap's home and farm. They are surrounded by many great plant ancestors, such as pine and oak and magnolia. And within the foliage, they make out the figure of 3 small homes. These homes are built with natural building materials, a mix of earth and hemp, and locally sustainably sourced timbers. Next slide, please. Each of them enters their own cabin, which are connected by an overhead and walkway, and take in the calming and relaxing interior, a nice break from the hustle and bustle of Detroit. As they walk through these small cabins, they look out the back window and discover another structure. Next slide, please. And it's the shared kitchen and fellowship space. Next slide, please. After leaving their bags and other heavy, bulky items in their own cabins, they enter the shared kitchen space. Next slide. And they find a beautifully prepared vegetarian and vegan-friendly meal. Next slide. Fresh from the garden, might I add. They also find the founders who meet them and greet them and instruct them to eat and rest before the rituals begin tomorrow. Next slide. So this is just a little bit of a breakdown on why we chose the types of plans and the type of way that we've set this up. So one of the biggest problems right now in terms of climate change and just in general the way that we are misusing the Earth's resources is the agricultural industry. As you can see here, over 25% actually of greenhouse gas emissions and over 50% of the world's arable land is dedicated to agriculture. And this is primarily in the form of monoculture, which means that you cut everything down and you plant acres and acres and acres of one species. And essentially that model just cannot work on our planet. It's not sustainable. Our Earth can't sustain that. And so if we were to try to feed the growing population in this way, we would need to basically cut down all remaining forests just to feed people. And we know that that has its own host of problems. And so a part of our solution, right, for us is taking the knowledge that we have access to but also is recognizing the ancient practices of both indigenous people here on Turtle Island and also our ancestors from Africa and enslaved folks. And the people who've lived on these lands for generations in ways that have not overburdened the earth. And so they now call it permaculture, right? But a lot of these things have been being practiced for far longer than that. Our ancestor, Mama Scrap, actually practiced a form of permaculture as well. And so it's our intention to maintain as much of the surrounding forested area while also slowly integrating different edible and medicinal crops. Yes. So, and that's kind of what our vision is for the land at Mama Scraps. It's just all about being more sustainable and conscientious, and also really introducing some more, or reintroducing, if you will, some of these different ways of food production to rural American South. Next slide, please. So in the morning, our organizers, they enjoy a delicious open breakfast, which is served with a variety of fresh foods. And to begin the day, yes, that's correct. Slide, stay there. Thank you. To begin the day, they are instructed through some forest maintenance practices, and they get to learn a bit about the local ecology and forestry. So maybe they'll be led through some water testing, some soil testing, and just in general get to learn about the different species that are inhabiting the land with them. Next slide. Then they assist in some other farming duties, likely harvesting, planting, or composting work before lunch and a restful afternoon. All right. So at this part, this is just kind of a breakdown of the costs for our food production. As Rotini mentioned earlier, in terms of phase 3, this is just basically telling you all specifically what the funds will be used for. So for about the 3-acre food forest, that's about $10K. For the herb garden and raised beds, another $2K. A greenhouse and hydroponic operations, total $25 to $50K, depending on what sort of deals we can find. Planting specific species, $5K. Permits for marijuana growing, which is becoming more legalized in Mississippi. It's going through that process now. And also just permaculture consultants and labor costs make up another 10 to 15K. And so if you could just stay there real quick, actually. So the reason why we're doing a lot of these things is because we don't want it to only be about feeding us or the inhabitants that are there on the space for retreats, but also because we really want to try to give back as much as we can to the surrounding community. And so we are looking to produce enough to do free food giveaways regularly, and also host members of the community on the land to do just land walks, and also get to know more about food production and also sustainable practices. So next slide. So at this point, it is the evening, and the first ritual is held. Because of the unique mix of visitors, they've come to do some generative conflict and grief work. After the past year, they have experienced conflicts within their organization, they've lost loved ones, and most of the participants have experienced varying degrees of burnout. And so the first night, they have that opening ceremony. Next slide. So after the first ritual, they have dinner and then they are free to rest and mingle. So on the next slide, the third day is mostly healing workshops and the rest of the rituals and work around healing grief. Next slide. On the fourth day, they'll have some life coaching and they'll also do some more generative conflict workshops. In the afternoon, they'll help with a food giveaway for the community, which will also give them opportunity to meet other community members and other members of Mama Scraps. And they'll finish it off with a night of celebration. Next slide, please. And this is their fifth and last day where they will have breakfast, have a closing ceremony, and depart, hopefully taking what they've learned and gained and experienced with them to the next place. I'll turn it back over to Bettini here.
Thank you, Aisha, for taking us through what a potential experience at Mama Scrap's home and farm can be. There's a poll that has launched. If you look under, where'd it go? Is it not showing up for you all? Okay, if you go to stage on the side, so if you're not in full screen, you should see on the right-hand side, it says event, it says stage, and it says my agenda. Make sure you're on stage and go to polls. We'd like to know which part of the vision are you excited about? Is it the retreat space? Is it the plans for the land? Is it the activities that will go on? Or is it all of it? Please, we'd love to see your votes. So I'm going to continue and I'm going to share about what it's going to take to bring this to life. Aisha gave you an example of the activities. We've talked about what we would like to see. And the reality is that we're going to need some funds to be able to bring it all to life. So let me change the view because I see that it's cutting off a little bit. Okay. Construction for the 2,400 square feet is going to be around $300K, $315,000. Clearing for about 1.5 to 2 acres of that space will cost estimated around $10,000. And then the permaculture research and planting that Aisha went over, as you saw, it was a range 60 to 85. So we just put it down for $75K. So the total that we're looking to raise for this project is $400,000. Of that, we have multiple strategies that are currently being employed, and we hope that you all today can continue to help build and generate momentum for. So we have our IOB fundraiser, which if someone drops in the chat, I'll make sure to pin that. The goal there is to raise $150,000, and we're over 40,000. I checked last night. I haven't checked today. In addition to that, we are also running a large donor strategy, and the goal for that is 100,000. That is for we're at about 40,000 with that as well. And then we're probably looking to bring in another 100 to 150 through grants. And if all of those are successful, then we will be able to get to the 400,000. In terms of our IOB, we have set up multiple tiers of funding, and you'll see this range on the page that Aisha has dropped in the link. But, you know, of course, we're welcome, but we start to do rewards at the root level for $250 to $499, then at the forest level, and it goes up from there. Anything over 2,500 to the 5,000 range is what we would consider large donor, and we would encourage you to reach out to us about making donations that way. Next slide. So, like I said, the fourth part of this will be a retreat house. We're not going to share about that today, but just know that there are plans to expand this vision, not necessarily to expand the space that we take up on the land, especially that 5 acres, but there is a vision for something even greater. And next slide, please. Here you'll be able to see just the next. Is it changing to next slide? Okay. I'm sorry, that shouldn't be there. Next slide. Here you see just what our land looks like right now. There's a little bit of clearing in the front, and then we are in that good old Mississippi forest. And so we would love to have you join with us as we transform it into a lot of those images that you saw earlier. Next slide. So this is the invitation. It's an opportunity for you to decide how you want to plug in. The first option is seeds of ideas. Perhaps right now is not the best time for you to plug in, but maybe you'd like to help with phases 3 and 4 down the road once we have the initial wellness village set up. Perhaps you want to email us to volunteer on the farm. I'll have Aisha drop our email address in the chat box for you as well. Second option is the sprouts of preparation. We have had a wonderful, wonderful capital campaign team thus far, and we are always looking to grow that team as we anticipate we'll be fundraising into the spring of next year. And so if you would like to join us on the team, you can also email us. And really, this is about propositioning donors and helping secure funds. It's a very intentional, clear, straight, how we getting this money in strategy and way to participate. And then the other is the leads of action. Perhaps you would like to help us reach our goal by becoming a donor yourself or a recurring sponsor. We hope to have our sponsorship set up at the top of next year, and you'll be able to give consistently. But the hope is that wherever you see yourself in this, it'll feel like you are a part of what we have. So that's it for our presentation part. You can stop sharing now. Thank you. Let's open it up for questions, for comments, for reflections. So it's Lizzie X, like this would be like a Highlander Center South, but more spiritual work. I think somewhat. I think Highlander is a good example for people who understand Highlander, but I don't want you to limit how you think about the work that we're doing. You know, this was an example, right? I should use the group of organizers as an example. Perhaps on their way in, they're encountering a woman who is leaving after her 2 weeks of being there for the postpartum village, right? Maybe as they're leaving, another group is coming in who's participating in our family healing project. It really is open, and it's about, you know, how do we create spaces where people can come and retreat? But that's just one part of it. It's also about how are we embedding ourselves and integrating into the community. It's about how we are creating a model for people to see that, like, no, we really can get back to the land and live off of it. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lizzie.
Yes. Thank you so much. I'd love to hear more questions. Maybe we could also take a look at those poll results.
Well, we got the poll results. People voted, and 100% said they are excited for all of it.
All of it. I love that. So I also dropped in here just our handles at Instagram and Facebook. Please do follow us. We're super active on there. So yeah.
So we have another question. It says, what phase is the village and common space relative to phases 3 and 4? So this that would be phase 2, Laura. So that's what we're currently in. We're fundraising so that we can bring the wellness village to life. It's a longer phase than some of the other portions of it, but the wellness village is what phase 2 is.
So we have a question here from Lisa. I'd like to involve my Loretto community for many reasons. Conscious reparations is one. So what is the best vehicle for me to present something to them to garner as much funding as possible? Would you like to answer that, Bertini?
Sure. I would say for us, we're always available if people want to do this, what we just did, like this overview in another setting, if it's helpful to present it. We're going to hopefully have this recorded and it'll be uploaded to our YouTube channel so you can share it. We have created a lot of materials. I think our newsletters are also really great to kind of help people get on board. But honestly, I think, it would be good. I see you saying that your community is full of mostly older folks, so Facebook and Instagram probably aren't best. That's fine. But this, I would say use these materials that we have already created, and or feel free to invite us in to your community to share. Hillary says, I feel so much gratitude for this beautiful vision. So excited for you all and the communities you'll serve. Thank you so much for your excellent programming this weekend. We are appreciative of you and the community and all the ways of support that you have provided, Hillary. Much appreciation. Here's a question for you, Aisha. Kudos for going down the permaculture route. How does the marijuana cultivation fit in with the overall vision?
Yes. So thank you for that question. Yes, we chose permaculture, and it's not entirely like fully just permaculture, as we said. Like there's a lot of different things going on there. But in regards to the marijuana cultivation, number one, I think it's important that there be Black producers of marijuana in the country because just of the fraught history of just being imprisoned for various things regarding marijuana, and also we'd like to become not only a space for healing, but we are really intentional about education, especially food production and just general like plant nurturing and land management education, especially for people of color, especially for Black people, like descendants of slaves, because it is such a fraught and very just complex relationship. And so like that's why we also kind of mentioned the hydroponics and just different methods of food production or just agricultural production. We do want to be a space for education. That's really important. And also, even right now, we're looking to do partnerships and cooperative partnerships with universities and HBCUs for a lot of the things that we're trying to do on the property as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would also just add that all projects have to be financially viable and sustainable. And so the marijuana cultivation also offers us an opportunity to create a revenue stream that is consistent to support the work of the village. So, yeah, I just answered your question, Lizzie.
Yes.
Other thoughts, comments, reactions. I see Another one from Darius. I know some Black folks that also inherited land recently, Mississippi too. What do you all think about collaborating with others or being models for others? Absolutely, right. So I shared this in our return and reclaim kind of frameworks for the project. That's the goal, right? Like either we can help other people establish similar villages, and or if they would like for us to steward the land, we will be open to that, right? Like I say, the goal is specifically for Mississippi. It's so right for so many reasons, primarily because it remains one of the most forested lands in this country left. And that means that that's still fresh soil, that is still raw nature. And there is real energy in the land that we are looking to connect to. And so, yes, and as Aisha said, it's also the Blackest state in America in terms of the proportion of who lives in that state. It's the Blackest. Now, it doesn't have the most Black people, right? That's what we got New York and Chicago for, which we also come from. But it's important for Black people to have a state that they are intentional about their relationship with the land. And so we welcome collaboration. I have a few friends here in St. Louis that I've already been in conversation with about what it looks like to, expand and include their familial inherited lands as well. And honestly, a lot of people are still trying to get those lands back because they have been stolen. It's a difficult conversation, right? Because on one stance, like even as Black folks, we still are not the indigenous folks of this land. But I think that there is space, and we operate in, community with folks who understand that indigenous and Black and brown folks deserve to be in relationship with the earth in a way that is not exploitive. And so, to that end, I think as long as we are looking to create communities like the ones that we're proposing, then it is a way to honor the earth.
I just want to throw in here real quick that Mama Scraps, while it is technically a nonprofit, we have embedded cooperative principles into our bylaws. And so with that, in Mississippi specifically, it's one of the longest going and most developed cooperative economic cities in Jackson, if you're familiar with Cooperation Jackson. In addition to that, we're also already in the works of setting down different routes with different groups in Mississippi. And also just like the Southeast region in general. So looking at the Federation of Southern Cooperatives as well. And so, yeah. And so, yes, like we're very, very intentional about collaborating and contributing to the already present. Because not like we're coming there to just like bring a bunch of brand new things necessarily. Like, there's tons of things going on in Mississippi that folks don't know about. Mm-hmm. And we're just here to kind of add to that. And hopefully, make as many connections as possible and provide safe havens for Black, Indigenous, and brown folks. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Just for a point of clarification, all of our paperwork is filed. We're just waiting on our formal letter of determination to come in. Great question. Clover says, is there space for communal and intentional living? Absolutely, right? This is why we are using the language of village. Granted, our initial space will be limited just based off of the fact that we don't want to completely deforest the land. But we would invite people to come down, and if they want to camp, if they want to do long-term stays, if they want to bring an RV, or, like, we're really open to the ways in which people want to be in community with us in that specific space. I have done intentional community before. And so it's not in the regard that like people will be there long term, like for years. But it is to create, a momentary village where then people can go back and figure out what this looks like in their own lives.
I don't know if you wanted to answer Lisa's earlier question.
Oh, okay. Where is it? I didn't see it. Sorry.
It's so Lisa said, P.S. I'm involved with the local food justice farming group here in Denver. And
I did see it. Yeah, absolutely. So we will send out an evaluation for this conference, and along with that, we'll send materials. I just found out that Hopin does not let you see the recordings after the event ends. So we'll also upload to YouTube, so that way everything that you all experience here on the platform will be available outside of Hopin. So all of that will come through for sure.
I love this question. So Darius asked, do y'all think Queen Sugar is a good visual of the realities of what y'all feel like the next couple of years will look like? And that is crazy that you say that, because honestly, when Queen Sugar came out, we were like, this is scary. Like, it fit the moment so well. Yeah.
So let's be very clear. Queen Sugar got hundreds of acres. Okay. Right. So we ain't got that much land. We just starting with a little tiny village that hopefully encourages more villages. This is not the same question, but it reminds me of another question we've gotten, and that is, how does this compare to like the Freedom Project that they're doing in Georgia? And I was like, I think there's space for both, right? Like, we need cities and whole towns that we are establishing as Black folks, where we are, deeply invested in the economic well-being of that space. And we also need models of intimacy. And that is what our project is. It is not it's not the large scale, come one, come all. It is a intimate invitation to each and every.
To be healed and to heal.
And Mama says to be healed and to heal. Lisa says we have a volunteer program in which we support an individual financially in a nonprofit for a year. Could such an individual white come and volunteer with you? I even have someone in mind. Absolutely. I think that's definitely, the type of work that I would love to have residencies where people can come and, Aisha has visions for people who will do residencies specifically with the farm. And then I have visions for people who will do residencies with the healing work with me and Mama. And so, it's a both and. Perhaps some folks want to combine that experience and have a holistic one. It's really open for people to create the experience that they want to have in whatever we're offering. And so this is why I said, she gave us an example of organizers coming down. We're talking about a postpartum village. We're talking about residencies. It's all of that. It's all of it.
Yes.
So we thank you all.
Yes.
We thank you all for joining us in this weekend. If there are more questions, feel free to email us and reach out anytime. We're going to be shutting down for the rest of the month, and then we'll be right back ready to go in January. But please share that IOB link with those who you know. If you have some large donor ideas that you want to share with us, feel free to email them over. And we're going to get this thing popping, okay? We are nearly at 100,000, and it's been a great year, and we look forward to continuing this work as we go on. Now, we would be remiss if we did not use this opportunity to celebrate the Queen, our mother, President of Mama Scraps, and she just had a birthday, and so we love you, and we are just so grateful for having a mother who is connected to family, to legacy and lineage, to have a mother who is committed to her own healing, who embraces the entirety of her daughter's beings for who they are, and for doing so in a way that encourages us to do the same for others. We pray that you be healed in this new year, that you be filled with so much light, so much love, so much joy and prosperity and abundance that it overflows into all you minister to.
Bless you. I thank you all so much. So this weekend has been truly awesome. I mean, my heart is overflowing with joy. And so I thank you all. I wasn't on the screen much today, but I'm right here, as you can see. So I do thank you all for participating, for staying in, for being with us these last 3 days. It really has been a blessing to me as well. And I thank God for another trip around the sun, because it ain't that everybody is here all the time. So believe that I do love all of you all, and I appreciate all of you all for plugging in. So thank you. And I thank God for my 2 beautiful daughters and for me having stewardship over them for a period, and I had to give them away. So I'm grateful though, but thanks much for everything. And I appreciate you all. But I'm celebrating you all as well though too, because we couldn't have did it without you. So know that we are very appreciative, and just we're here for it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All righty. Thank you all so much. It's been an honor to be here, and let's be in community. So bye.
Bye, y'all. So much love. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a beautiful holiday season in whatever way that means and looks like for you. Peace.
Thursday night session.
Yes, Thursday night. Thank you,
Our
Lizzie.
opening ceremony. Thank you, Lizzie.
All right, peace.
Bye-bye.